Spring break was supposed to be our escape. After months of grinding through exams and endless lectures, a trip to a secluded cabin seemed like the perfect way to let loose and recharge. It was me, Lisa, Jackie, and Tina, just 4 friends looking for a good time in the middle of nowhere. We had all worked hard, and we weren't the kind of girls who thrived in a party scene. So we planned out a week of hiking, campfires, s'mores, and other good stuff like that. A real act like a kid again type deal. Lisa found the cabin on Craigslist. It was cheap and available, and we were dumb college kids who thought that was all we needed to check for. It sat at the edge of a sprawling meadow, surrounded by thick woods that stretched for miles. When we arrived, the air was crisp, the nights were quiet, and the only sign of life was the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant hoot of an owl. It felt like paradise after so many all-nighters of studying. That is, until we found the Burrow. We had been exploring the woods when Jackie called us over to check out this cool, weird thing that she had found. She was the outdoorsy type and loved leaving the beaten path, even making fun of me for being too timid when I protested. Lisa and Tina looked to her more than me for leadership, so off the beaten path to see the cool and weird thing we went. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than an overgrown rabbit hole. Yet as we got closer to Jackie, certain details began to stand out that even city girls like us could notice. The edges of the opening were too precise, as if carved by a tool. It was way too big for an ordinary rabbit, too big even for a fox or badger. A faint, sickly sweet smell wafted up from the dark tunnel, mixing with the earthy scent of the forest. Jackie stamped her feet, yelling for the rabbit inside to come out and play, then laughed and told us that, of course, it wasn't a real rabbit hole, since they were tiny. Something about the Burrow made my skin crawl. It wasn't just the size, shape, or smell, but the feeling that something unpleasant was watching us from the shadows inside. I suggested it might be a bear's den or lair or whatever you call the home of a bear. Lisa and Tina freaked out at the idea we might be disturbing a sleeping grizzly, but Jackie just laughed it off, saying bears are already out of hibernation by April. I didn't know enough about bears to contradict her. Still, I insisted on leaving the hole behind, which Tina and Lisa supported, and Jackie finally acquiesced to us heading back to the cabin. Despite getting my way, I could not shake the unease that clung to me as we made our way out of the woods and back across the meadow. That night, the dreams began. In my dream, I was in the woods. Moonlight cast everything in an eerie silver glow. The Burrow loomed before me, larger than before, its 2 even edges now pulsating like a heartbeat. A figure emerged from the darkness within, a tall, grotesquely elongated body, long limbs swinging, all covered in matted gray fur. A stretched-out face poked into the moonlight, wet nostrils flaring as it caught my scent. Its eyes were hollow, dark pits, and a pair of oversized teeth extended over its lower jaw and chin, dangling slobber that glinted in the moonlight. It cradled small objects in its hands that I could not see properly, but which nonetheless made my stomach turn. I smelled blood and opened my mouth to scream, but the thing bounded right up to me and shoved one of the small objects into my mouth, blocking my throat. I crashed to the ground, trying to dislodge it as the creature bounded past me in the direction of the cabin. I woke up, gasping for air and drenched in sweat. My heart racing and an ache in my jaw like my mouth had been forced open further than it could go. Outside, the wind howled. I could see out the window from my bed and reflexively looked out, then nearly screamed when I saw movement in the meadow, like a man running away. I scrambled back against the headboard and crouched, frozen in terror, until sunrise. The next morning, Jackie was gone. Lisa and Tina thought she had gone for an early hike. As I said, she was much more outdoorsy than the rest of us, and there had been tension after we made her come home early yesterday. It was entirely plausible that she had gone out alone to blow off some steam. I was out of it from my nightmare and panic over seeing things that weren't there, so I spent the next few hours trying to convince myself I was having a meltdown over nothing. Yet, as the hours dragged on and Jackie did not reappear, panic began to set in. We went out together to search, calling her name over and over until our voices were hoarse. By some unspoken agreement, we avoided the area where we had found the burrow. But when the sun had traveled so far across the sky that it would be dark soon, we finally went to check there too. Jackie had been so taken with the place yesterday, and we had checked everywhere else that we could think of. The opening was larger than before. Around its edges were scattered tufts of gray, coarse fur. The same sickly sweet smell hung heavy in the air. There was no sign of Jackie. Lisa wanted to call the police, but our phones had no signal, and the closest town was miles away. That had been the appeal of the cabin in the first place. She decided to drive out there anyway, but all 4 tires on the Jeep had been slashed. It was too dark to set out on a hike, especially if some sicko was out there slashing tires with a knife, so we locked ourselves inside the cabin, moved furniture in front of the doors, and moved all our stuff to the living room so we could sleep side by side. Nestled between Lisa and Tina, I nodded off despite myself. I did not want to sleep, but my lids simply would not stay open after my restless previous night and tension-filled day. Lisa and Tina were wired too tight to sleep, and it felt like a betrayal of them and of Jackie to allow myself to rest. But despite myself, my eyes slowly slipped closed. The dream came again, more vivid this time. I was once more back at the burrow, bathed in silvery moonlight. I saw Jackie, her face pale and streaked with dirt, staring at me from just inside the mouth of the burrow. She opened her mouth to speak, but instead of words, nothing but a wet gurgle emerged. Still, I heard an echo in my mind of what she had wanted to say. It doesn't want to play. Thick, red drool hung from her lips. The elongated, gray figure loomed up behind her, clawed fingers resting on her shoulders. It tilted its head as if daring me to come closer. I caught an impression of growths on the top of its head, long and thin, and twitching in my direction. When I woke, Tina was gone. The furniture had been moved, and the front door was wide open, swinging in the wind. Lisa and I grabbed flashlights and ran outside, screaming Tina's name, fear gripping us so tight we could not let go of each other. I caught a flash of someone running into the woods, and we followed, even though we should have known it was a bad idea. At the time, all I could think about was Tina and the image of bloody drool dripping from Jackie's mouth in my dream. We found one of Tina's sneakers on the ground, spattered with blood. The other lay further on, as if it had popped off while she was dragged along, making a furrow in the leaf debris we followed. We both realized where we were going, but what else could we do? We couldn't leave our friend to whatever psycho had apparently broken in and taken her. The burrow was massive now. A trail of blood led into the darkness of the tunnel. I wanted to run away, to turn back and never look again, but Lisa was already stepping closer, calling desperately for Tina. She was so much braver than me. Her bravery was her undoing. Before I could stop it, a huge, clawed hand shot out of the burrow and yanked Lisa into it. The whole thing happened so fast. A blur of motion, a strangled scream, then silence. I stood frozen, the beam of my flashlight trembling over the black void. There came a heavy thump, like something big jumping. It made the ground rattle. It was coming from inside the tunnel, and it was getting closer. A thin figure wreathed in gray fur bounded into the light. I ran. I don't remember how I made it back to the cabin. My legs were shaking, my breath came in ragged gasps, and my vision blurred with tears. I barricaded the door, every creak of the floorboards making my heart leap. I huddled amongst the possessions we had gathered in the living room, crying and begging for this not to be happening. I even held tight to the little silver cross necklace my mom got me as a gift when she saw how stressed I was about exams, even though I hadn't even been to church since I left for college. Not long after, the heavy thumps I had heard from inside the tunnel approached the cabin. They stopped in front of the door. Something scratched, or at least it tried to. A feral hiss preceded the noise, moving swiftly away. The thumps retreated. Though I stayed awake all night, the thing did not come back. The sun rose slowly, its light spilling over the meadow like a promise of safety. I waited until it was fully up before I ventured anywhere near the door. The outward-facing side of the front door was scored with deep slashes that ended halfway down in scorch marks. Little bits of charred gray fur lay on the ground. And next to them was a bird's egg, covered in so much blood it looked like it had been painted with the stuff. I stumbled away from the cabin and along the road until I could flag down a passing car. I'm told I was babbling like a madwoman when I was picked up, spouting nonsense about Easter eggs and a giant mutant rabbit stealing my friends. I don't remember any of it. The police only found pieces of Jackie, Tina, and Lisa near the big empty burrow. There wasn't even enough to identify them without dental records and DNA testing. The official story was that they had disturbed a bear that had come out of hibernation late, and it had killed and eaten them. But I knew better. Easter isn't about chocolate eggs, or hot cross buns, or pastel baskets. It's about faith and talismans beating back things that lurk in the darkness and come out at this time of year to claim the unwary and unfaithful. But I wear my little silver cross all year round, just in case.